Hey everybody, it's Lori the Frugal Mom, and welcome back to my channel. This morning I am prepping some smothered beef tips and gravy in my crock pot. Part of the recipe will be done on the stovetop, and part of it will be done, well, most of it will be done in the crock pot. Now, the reason why you want to do this is because this cut of beef, it tends to be very tough. So the longer that you cook it, all those, muscly fibers and whatnot, they break down and it makes for a very tender beef. So what I'm going to be using is this halal beef chunk that I got at the food pantry. I got 4 pounds of it. I'm going to make both packages because I want leftovers. And I'm not exactly sure what halal means. I looked it up. It kind of just means that, nothing's been done to the meat process-wise. It just means that it's been, I think, slaughtered in a more humane way. So that's what that is. And the folks at the food pantry have told me that it's really good. So try it. We don't eat a lot of beef over the last 6 months. So even though the recipe doesn't say to do it, since it's beef tips, I want to seal in the flavor. I want to give it more flavor, and it'll help thicken the gravy as well, to use some flour, and you can season it as well. Since I have to brown it anyway, I might as well. So I've gotten here about a cup of flour. All-purpose flour is fine. I seasoned it with garlic, salt, and pepper to taste. So you can put in whatever you feel that you like. So I am going to get ready prepping our beef. I want to cut off all the fat. I'm going to show you the beef real quick before I do that. So I took one package of the beef out of the package and I've drained it. And, there's all these like fat pieces and whatnot. I don't really tend to like that. I'll leave a little bit on just to help make them tender, but there's some huge chunks. And, my son tends to be a little bit funny with that texture, so I am going to trim some of that off. Okay, so I have put all my beef chunks from that 2-pound package, after they were trimmed, into the flour mixture. I shook them around, and now I am going to brown them. Now, you don't want to brown them too much because they're going to be in the crock pot for a while. In my case, 4 to 5 hours. If you have all day, you'll do 8 to 9 hours. So I'm just going to give them a quick brown so they don't cook all the way through. Then I'm going to put them on a plate while I do the rest of the prep for the recipe. Okay, so I'm browning my beef chunks in the flour coating, and I just want them basically to get like a crust on them. There's a couple pieces that are still red. I'm going to start taking out some of the more brown chunks. They're going to still have a little bit of a heat to them, and that's okay. Right, so what you're looking at here is some sliced onions. Now the recipe, and you'll see that because I'll post it, it calls for diced onions, but I kind of prefer the big rustic slices. And these aren't huge by any means, I some of them are, but they're mostly thin. So I put a little bit more oil in the pan, and then I added onions. This is 2 cups of sliced onions, and then 2 tablespoons of garlic, because you guys know that I like my garlic. So what I'm going to do now is add my beef broth to the pan. Now I'm doubling the recipe, so I'm going to add 6 cups of beef broth and a tablespoon of Who's Your Sister sauce. Okay, so here's my crock pot insert. I've got the beef in the bottom of it. I have poured the onion, garlic, and beef broth mixture in it, and of course Who's Your Sister sauce. I have taken the liberty of adding a packet of onion soup mix. They are still affordable. They are 99 cents at Aldi. I find that it just adds a little bit more of a heartier taste to this. So I did that. You could leave it out if you want to, if the onion flavor is enough for you. And I'm going to give this a good mix. You see all the beef chunks down there. And I happen to have a nice sized container of sliced mushrooms, white mushrooms, that I got from the food pantry a week or so ago. Now I don't want them to go bad, and you can't really freeze them, so why not? It'll just make it a nice, heartier, beefier flavor, and I like to wash mine off. I know people say that you shouldn't, but that's what I like to do. Okay, so I gave everything a nice stir. I also forgot to mention that I added a teaspoon of thyme to this. I use ground thyme because that's what I have on hand, and that's all you've got. Use what you've got. It actually calls for thyme leaves. If you've got that, feel free to add that. However, if all you've got is ground, like I always say, just use what you've got. It'll still impart the flavor. So I'm going to put our cover on, and I am going to choose to cook it on high. I'm going to hit my select button. That's low, high, and I'm going to set my time. So this says 4 to 5 hours. I'm going to do it for 5 hours, and then we're just going to let it start. So this is an 8-quart crock pot, and it's awesome. I happened to get this off Marketplace for only $15 a few years ago. It had only been used a few times. The person who had it just didn't seem to like this crock pot for whatever reason. I have a rival crock pot as well, a 5-quart. It's an older model. It's 30 years old. That's how long ago I was first married. And yeah, so I wanted a bigger one so I can make bigger meals. As I mentioned, I'm doubling this meal so we can have it several nights for dinner. We can have some for lunch if that's what we want. I'm going to serve it over mashed potatoes, and I'll show you that later as well. So yeah, so this is a good one. An added bonus is the old rival crock pots didn't always have timers on it, but this one does. So since I'm going to be running around doing different things in the house, I have a doctor's appointment for Matt later, you know, it'll just stop all by itself. So now we're going to let it just do its thing. As you can see, it started to count down. I will see you guys back in 4 hours and 59 minutes. Okay guys, so I was going through my video clips of the beef tip recipe, and I realized that I accidentally deleted one of the clips. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to tell you what happened. So after I set my crock pot to high for, I think it was 4 or 5 hours, you will see it in the recipe, and you'll see it in the clip before the one I deleted. And I'm going to place this one right in there. I noticed that it was bubbling after only about 45 minutes on high, and I didn't want the beef to dry out. So, and ended up cooking somewhere between 45 minutes and an hour on high, and then I put it on low for the remainder of the 3 hours. The 3 hours I had left to cook it. You know, and it's a good thing that I did that, because it turns out that the newer crock pots sometimes will cook a little bit faster than the older generation. So that's what I did. And then you'll see in the next video clip how I separated the beef from the broth and, you know, most of the mushrooms and the onions. And that's pretty much it. So just watch the temperature on your crock pots. You'll know your machines better than I would. You know, you just don't want your beef to dry out. So again, I hope you guys like this video. Look at that, guys. That smells amazing. I wish, I know I say this, and a lot of YouTubers too, I wish that you guys could smell it, that I had smell-o-vision. And to give you an idea, my sink is very clean, so don't worry. I already took out the large bay leaf I had in there. Here is all the beef, some of the mushrooms and the onions. It's okay to leave the rest of them in our crock pot. I'm going to start making the slurry right now. So since I've got the recipe doubled, I am going to do 6 tablespoons of unsalted butter. You could use salted if you wanted, if that's all you have. You won't have to add so much salt on the back end. And to that, I have 6 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. And we're just gonna whisk it. Sorry about the tricky camera work, it's a little hard. We're just gonna whisk it until it has no lumps, which it doesn't. We're gonna let it cook over like a medium-low heat. So all that floury raw taste comes out of it, you know, for about 3-4 minutes, and then I'll taste it and see how it is. So this is how you make a roux. Okay, so what I've done here, I added 1 cup of the broth from the crock pot. That beautiful broth. And it's normal for it to look like this at this stage. So I'm going to slowly add a little bit more at a time until I get what resembles a gravy. And until I reach another full cup. Might need a little bit more, you know. It's not an exact science. And then I'm going to add it back to the remaining broth in the crock pot. So what I've done After I got some nice, smooth, thicker gravy in my frying pan, I took all of it and I added it back to my crock pot. I whisked it up pretty nicely. It's got no meat in it again at this point, and I'm going to put the top on it. I have it on high. I'm going to wait for it to come to a boil, which should take about 10 minutes. Still pretty hot, so that's all good. So I will be back after that step. Okay guys, so here is the gravy after it's been cooking on high for about 10-15 minutes. It doesn't need any longer than that. At this point, I am going to add back my beef tips and the vegetables that came out, and I'm going to let that kind of simmer together for, probably 5 to 10 minutes. Okay, so you might be wondering what it is that I'm going to be making with this. And traditionally, beef tips are served with either rice, on a bed of rice, a bed of buttered egg noodles, mashed potatoes. They're good on all of those things. My favorite happens to be mashed potatoes. I don't have any fresh potatoes tonight, so I'm going to be utilizing some potato flakes that I got at the food pantry a few weeks ago. Now, I know some people will poo-poo these. I used to. I was never a big fan of them. I didn't use them for years, and that is because in the 70s and 80s when I was growing up, they were really disgusting. I don't know what's changed. My mom used to make them because making fresh mashed potatoes was probably a little bit too laborious later in life for her. These tended to be cheaper sometimes than fresh potatoes. So, they've come a long way, and as long as you know how to make them taste good, they're really pretty good as a bed for this beef tip dish. So I looked on the ingredients, and there's really only a couple of chemically sounding ingredients. I looked them up, and they are derived from natural ingredients. But, sometimes you gotta just make do with what you've got. And that's what I'm gonna do tonight. I'm gonna use my potato flakes as the bed for my beef tips. And since we are all huge fans of corn, I'm gonna make some white corn. And then, I don't know if you all remember, a few weeks ago I also got some Peter Luger's cream spinach from the food pantry, and there it is. I'm heating it up in a little saucepan, and that's what we're gonna have. We also have some Hawaiian rolls in the fridge that I have to use up, and I'll serve that too. See you in a little bit. Here are our instant mashed potatoes, and after you make them the way that I mentioned, a little bit of sea salt, some pepper, butter, tiny bit of chicken broth, and your milk, they come out just as rich and creamy as they would if they were homemade. Very close. Oh my goodness, guys. I wish you could smell this. I know I said it earlier, but there it is, all plated up. And I'm going to be the one to do the taste test. So, I'll be right back. Alright, so once again, there is our beef tips and gravy, homemade gravy. Take a little bit of the potatoes, a little bit of the gravy, and a piece of beef. Matt's behind me.
Very good, y'all.
He tasted the beef tips in the crock pot, but he's going out for a little bit. So I'm going to taste test the whole thing together. I'm not saying this. Let me finish chewing.
I'm being so serious. When I tried it earlier, 10 out of 10.
Thank you, honey.
Welcome.
It's delicious, really. What I did, I substituted a little bit of soy sauce for the red wine vinegar. I'm sure the red wine vinegar would really add a little bit of something to it, but I didn't have any. So it called for a teaspoon, I believe, so that's what I added, a teaspoon, and it just punched up the flavor a little bit more. And the onion soup did that as well. It is so delicious. You guys got to try it. I'm going to go and finish my dinner, get myself a nice dinner roll for sopping up that yummy gravy. And I hope that you guys have enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit the like button, subscribe. I'd love to have you as part of our frugal family. And I will see you guys in the next one. Oh, and I will also post the recipe that I used down below. Until next time, guys, I'm sending you love from New Jersey. Have a great night.